Amara's life crumbled in a single night. The discovery didn't come through whispers, nor through suspicious receipts tucked away in Derrick's jacket. It came like a strike of lightning, an intimate photo of her husband with another woman, boldly sent to her phone. Not hidden, not mistaken, sent directly, as if it were a trophy. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Benny Stories, hit the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up, so you'll never miss more powerful folk tales like this. Her breath caught, her hands trembled, her heart raced, not just from the betrayal but from the cruelty of its delivery. She had given Derrick 10 years of her life, 10 years of sacrifice, of silent compromises, of carrying the weight of a home while he basked in admiration outside. Amara collapsed onto the living room floor. Taves rushed, but silence enveloped her. She couldn't even scream. It was as though her entire body had shut down to protect her from a magnitude of pain. When Derrick walked in that night, he didn't deny it. He didn't beg forgiveness. Instead, he smirked, tossed his keys on the table, and said, "At least now you know." It wasn't just betrayal. It was contempt. In that moment, Amara looked like a woman who had surrendered. But her collapse was not the end. It was a seed of something far more powerful, though neither she nor Derrick knew it yet. The following weeks were unbearable. Derrick didn't hide his affair. He paraded it. Selena, the mistress, was younger, bold, unashamed. She draped herself across Derrick's arm at parties, laughed loudly in restaurants, posted their photos online. Amara's friends pitied her, but pity cut deeper than betrayal. "You need to fight for your man," some said. Others whispered, "She must have failed him somehow." Derrick thrived in this chaos. He wore his betrayal like a medal, enjoying the humiliation it brought Amara. When she filed for divorce quietly, he mocked her. "Good," he said. "At least now I'm free to have a real woman." The cruelty was deliberate. He wanted to crush her spirit, to make her feel less than human. But Amara's silence unsettled him. She didn't scream, didn't beg. She simply withdrew, like a tide retreating before the storm. Selena, meanwhile, felt victorious. But victories built on cruelty rarely last. Silence became Amara's weapon, though no one recognized it as such. She didn't defend herself publicly. She didn't answer gossip. She let them call her weak, let them think she had surrendered. But in the stillness of her nights, she thought. She wrote. She planned. She remembered who she was before Derrick, a woman with dreams, a woman with fire. She began to see her silence not as defeat, but as a shield. Selena misread it. She believed Amara was finished. "She's pathetic," she laughed one evening, scrolling through Amara's quiet social media page. Derrick joined in, cruelly agreeing. But silence is a way of unsettling oppressors. It made Derrick restless. He expected tantrums, expected destruction. Instead, Amara's quiet composure gnawed at him. Sometimes the absence of noise is louder than screams. Derrick's cruelty escalated. He began flaunting his wealth with Selena, buying her jewelry and cars, all with money Amara once helped him save. One night, he came to Amara's home, still legally his. He sneered, "You're lucky I even let you stay here until the court decides." Her silence only enraged him further. But what broke her most was not Derrick's betrayal. It was a betrayal of trust from those she once considered friends. Many abandoned her, choosing the side of status and glamour. She sat alone in her bedroom, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe they are right," she whispered to herself. "Maybe I am nothing without him." But deep inside, a spark remained. Sometimes, to rebuild, everything first is a collapse. And Amara was collapsing. It was Selena, ironically, who lit the spark. One night, while out with Derrick, Selena experienced what Amara had lived through for years. Derrick's cruelty turned on her. A careless insult in front of his friends. A shove when she spoke out of turn. A reminder that, to him, women were replaceable. For the first time, Selena's laughter faded. She caught a glimpse of the monster Amara had endured. Days later, she saw Amara by chance in a cafe. Amara sat quietly with a notebook, her face calm, her pen moving. Selena expected bitterness, maybe hatred. Instead, she saw something she couldn't explain. Peace. It unsettled her. It intrigued her. And it planted the first seed of doubt about her own so-called victory. Amara's collapse wasn't surrender. It was transformation, unfolding quietly. And soon, Selena would play a role no one expected. Derrick strutted through life as though he had already conquered the world. In his mind, the story was simple. He had left behind a quiet, boring wife for a vibrant, exciting new partner. To his circle of friends, colleagues, and social followers, he sold the tale that Amara had been holding him back, and now, with Selena on his arm, he was living his true life. They became the couple everyone whispered about. Selena was young, stylish, and bold. She wore her victory like a diamond crown. At galas, she kissed Derrick passionately in front of cameras, daring anyone to mention Amara's name. In restaurants, she laughed loudly, draped in designer dresses he bought her. But Derrick's hunger for validation was insatiable. He needed everyone to see him, to envy him, to believe his new life was flawless. He threw extravagant parties where champagne fountains flowed and gold confetti rained down at midnight. At one such party, Derrick stood on a balcony with a glass raised high. To freedom, he shouted, to finally living life without deadweight. Everyone laughed, everyone but Selena. She noticed a slight quiver in his hand as he held the glass. She noticed how desperately he looked around to see if people were clapping. And Amara? She wasn't even there. She was at home, sitting quietly on her couch, listening to the distant hum of the city. People assumed her absence meant defeat. But Amara's silence was not surrender. It was strategy. The louder Derrick laughed, the more hollow his triumph became. The truth was this: men who win by cruelty never rest easy. The silence surrounding Amara was beginning to shift. While Derrick was busy flaunting Selena, someone unexpected reached out to Amara. Mr. Lawson, a respected lawyer and Derrick's former mentor, appeared at her doorstep one evening. His face carried years of wisdom, but also a burden of secrets. He sat at Amara's kitchen table, his voice low. "Amara," he said gently, "I've stayed quiet for too long. Derrick has built his empire on lies, fraud, tax evasion, deals with dangerous people. If you want to protect yourself, you need to know the truth." He slid a thick envelope across the table. Inside were bank statements, contracts, and private memos, proof that Derrick's wealth was not as invincible as it seemed. Amara's hands trembled as she sifted through the evidence. Each page was another layer of Derrick's deception, another nail in the coffin of his public facade. For years, she had believed she was a weaker one in the marriage. But now, she held power Derrick didn't know she possessed. She thanked Mr. Lawson quietly. As he left, he paused at the door. "He thinks your silence means weakness. Don't let him know what you're planning. Let him keep underestimating you." Amara sat back, the document spread across a table like a secret arsenal. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt something stir inside her chest. Control. The cracks in Derrick's empire began to show. At a corporate dinner weeks later, he was surrounded by associates, bragging about his latest ventures. His laughter was too loud, his jokes too sharp. Suddenly, one of the men leaned forward and asked, "Derrick, these rumors about your offshore accounts, are they true?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Derrick's smile faltered for a split second before he scoffed and waved it off. "Ridiculous," he snapped. "People are jealous of success, that's all." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. His colleagues exchanged glances. Doubt had been planted. Selena noticed it too. She had never seen Derrick rattle before. That night, when she asked him about it, he barked, "Don't you ever question me." Meanwhile, Amara received the news with calm satisfaction. She hadn't lifted a finger, hadn't spoken a word against him, and yet the cracks were widening. It was as though the truth itself was fighting on her behalf. In the quiet of her bedroom, she whispered to herself, "Patience. Let him unravel." Selena's world was no longer the fantasy she had envisioned. At first, being with Derrick was thrilling. The cars, the jewelry, the endless attention. But soon, the shine began to fade. Derrick wasn't just arrogant in public. He was cool in private. One evening, at a high-end restaurant, Selena made the mistake of correcting him in front of friends. His face darkened. He leaned in close and whispered venomously, "Don't embarrass me again." When she laughed nervously to cover the tension, he left her there, abandoned at the table while the others stared. She sat alone, humiliated, waiting for a taxi. And for the first time, she thought of Amara not as a rival, but as a mirror. This was the man she lived with for 10 years. How had she survived it? Selena began scrolling through Amara's social media late at night. Instead of finding bitterness, she found nothing. Silence. Pictures of books, of coffee cups, of sunsets. No anger. No desperate attempt to prove anything. It confused her. It intrigued her. It made her feel small. And deep in her chest, for the first time, Selena felt shame. The final straw came suddenly. Selena and Derrick were attending a business dinner. Derrick's phone buzzed, and Selena, seated beside him, happened to glance at the screen. Her heart dropped. Another woman's name. A message too intimate to ignore. Her stomach twisted. She waited until they were alone to confront him. "Who is she?" "Derrick," she demanded. He didn't flinch. He didn't even deny it. Instead, he smirked, poured himself a drink, and said coldly, "You really thought you were special?" The words hit harder than any slap. The mask was gone. The charming, confident man she once admired was nothing more than a manipulator, greedy, arrogant, insatiable. Selena stormed out, her heels clicking against the pavement as her chest heaved with anger. For the first time, she understood Amara's silence. For the first time, she realized she was not the winner in this game. She was just another pawn. And as she drove home in tears, one thought echoed louder than the rest. Amara was never the weak one. Derrick was. For months, Amara had lived in silence. She endured whispers, pity, and mockery without lifting her voice. People mistook her quietness for weakness. But now, holding Derrick's secrets in her hands, she knew it was time to speak. The moment came during a charity event, an event Derrick proudly sponsored to showcase his wealth. Amara arrived unannounced. She wore a simple black dress, no jewels, no glitter, just calm dignity. The room buzzed with whispers as she stepped forward to the microphone during the open remarks. Her voice was steady, even soft, but it carried through the hall. There are men who believe silence means surrender, but silence sometimes means preparation. And tonight, I want to thank everyone for supporting causes built on honesty, not deceit. The room shifted uneasily. Derrick froze, his smile faltering. He knew exactly who her words were aimed at. She didn't reveal the documents that night. She didn't have to. Her presence, her words, and her calm defiance were enough to rattle him. For the first time, Amara spoke, and the silence that once looked like defeat transformed into power. Selena couldn't sleep. Derrick's words, "You really thought you were special," replayed in her mind like a cool song. She had stolen another woman's husband, flaunted her victory, and yet here she was, discarded, humiliated, just like Amara. The realization gnawed at her. She hadn't beaten Amara. She had only joined her in Derrick's cycle of cruelty. One night, she drove aimlessly through the city until she found herself parked outside Amara's home. She didn't know why she came. She didn't plan to knock. But the lights were on, and through the window, she saw Amara sitting with a notebook, her face calm, her posture strong. Selena broke into tears in her car. For the first time, she felt not like a rival but like a victim who shared Amara's pain. And beneath the shame, a thought sparked. Maybe we are not enemies. Maybe we are both survivors. Her regret became unbearable, and regret often birthed redemption. The scandal broke like wildfire. Screenshots surfaced online, texts, emails, even voice notes, exposing Derrick's manipulations, his schemes, and his lies. Deals he bragged about turned out to be fraudulent. His affectionate words to Selena were revealed to be copy-paste versions he sent to multiple women. No one knew exactly who leaked them. Some suspected a betrayed business partner. Others whispered it was Selena. Derrick accused Amara, but she denied it calmly, almost serenely. The internet feasted on his downfall. Memes spread. Headlines screamed. The man who once looked invincible was now the subject of ridicule. Selena watched the chaos unfold. She hadn't been the leaker, but she felt a dark satisfaction. Still, guilt lingered. Amara had endured humiliation quietly for months, while she had once laughed at her pain. Selena realized it wasn't enough to watch Derrick fall. She had to stand beside the woman she once mocked. The day of the divorce hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed, journalists, Bloggers, even curious neighbors filled the benches. Derrick swaggered in with his usual arrogance. He expected to win easily, to strip Amara of dignity and wealth, to walk away untouched. But Amara came prepared. With Mr. Lawson by her side, she presented evidence of Derrick's fraud, his offshore accounts, and his manipulations. One by one, the documents landed on the judge's bench like blows. The lawyers sparred fiercely, but Amara remained calm, composed. Derrick, on the other hand, lost his temper repeatedly, shouting, interrupting, showing the ugly face he usually kept hidden. At one point, Amara finally spoke, her voice echoing in the hushed room. For years, I was told my silence was weakness, but today, my silence speaks through evidence, and the truth does not lie. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Derrick's empire was unraveling in real time. The unexpected twist came when Selena stepped into the courtroom. Gasps erupted as she walked to the witness stand, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Derrick's eyes widened in disbelief. Under oath, Selena confessed everything. She admitted to the affair, yes, but she also revealed Derrick's cruelty, the insults, the manipulations, the additional mistresses. She described him not as a loving partner, but as a predator who saw women as disposable. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger. I thought I won when I took him from Amara, but I didn't win anything. I lost myself. And today, I stand not as his mistress, but as another woman he tried to destroy. Amara watched silently, her face unreadable. For the first time, the mistress who once mocked her was fighting on her side. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Derrick's mask had not only slipped, it had shattered. And in that moment, the tide of the entire story turned. Derrick had built his empire on sand, and now the tide was rushing in. The leaked messages had cracked the foundation, but the courtroom revelations shattered it completely. Business partners withdrew overnight. Investors pulled funding. His name, once spoken with admiration, now carried the stench of fraud and humiliation. News outlets splashed headlines across their front pages. Business mogul exposed in fraud scandal. The fall of Derrick Cole, betrayed wife, Mistress testifies. His accounts were frozen. Properties seized. The parties stopped. The invitations dried up. The man who once strutted into rooms with cameras flashing now skulked through back doors, sunglasses on, head lowered. But perhaps the cruelest blow wasn't financial. It was the silence that followed him everywhere. No calls, no allies, no one rushing to his defense. The same friends who had cheered his arrogance now treated him like a disease. He thought he had destroyed Amara with public shame. But in the end, it was his own mask that crumbled, and the whole world was watching. Amara did not celebrate loudly. She never had. After the trial, she returned to her small home, the one Derrick once mocked, and sat quietly with a cup of tea. Friends came, journalists called, and offers for interviews flooded her inbox. But she declined them all. She had no desire to prove herself through words. Instead, she focused on rebuilding. She began consulting with women in her community, offering guidance to those trapped in silence as she once was. She opened workshops teaching financial literacy, self-worth, and resilience. Slowly, she became not just a survivor, but a leader. One evening, as she addressed a group of women, she said, "People will tell you silence means you surrendered, but silence can also mean you're gathering strength. Don't ever mistake patience for weakness. Sometimes the strongest storms start in stillness." The applause was thunderous. Amara smiled faintly, but her eyes glistened. She had risen from ashes not by seeking revenge, but by reclaiming herself. Selena's life had also changed. For weeks after the trial, she avoided mirrors. She couldn't stand the reflection of the woman she had become, selfish, arrogant, complicit in another woman's suffering. But guilt can be the first step toward redemption. She reached out to Amara, nervously knocking on her door one afternoon. Amara opened it, surprised, but calm. Selena's voice cracked as she spoke. "I came here not for forgiveness, but for accountability. I was wrong. I hurt you. And in the end, he hurt me the same way. But I want to change." Amara studied her for a long moment before answering. "Change doesn't come from words, Selena. It comes from what you do next." Selena nodded. From that day, she began volunteering in the same workshops Amara had built. At first, women looked at her with suspicion, the mistress who once laughed at another's pain. But over time, they saw her sincerity. They saw her humility. And slowly, Selena began to heal, not as Derrick's mistress, not as Amara's rival, but as her own woman. The narrative flipped. For months, Amara had been whispered about as a weak wife, the discarded woman, the silent figure in the background. Now, she became the symbol of resilience, of dignity, of quiet strength. Media outlets wrote articles celebrating her transformation, from betrayed wife to community leader. Amara's silence was her strength. Documentaries requested her story. Talk shows begged for appearances. Young women sent her letters, thanking her for showing them that silence doesn't mean surrender, that collapse can be the beginning of a rise. Meanwhile, Derrick became a cautionary tale. His name was synonymous with arrogance, betrayal, and downfall. Once envied, he was now pitted. The world saw the truth at last. Amara had never been defeated. She had only been waiting for her moment to rise. The final chapter of Amara's story wasn't about Derrick. It wasn't even about Selena. It was about her. On a quiet morning, Amara walked through her garden, barefoot, the sun warming her face. She thought back to the night she collapsed on her living room floor, broken by a single photo. She remembered the whispers, the humiliation, the tears she shed alone. And she smiled, not because it hadn't hurt, but because she had survived it. More than survived, she had transformed. Selena visited that day, bringing flowers. They sat together, not as enemies, but as women who had both been broken and rebuilt. Selena looked at her and said softly, "He thought he destroyed you, but instead he made you a queen." Amara laughed gently. "No," she replied. "I made myself a queen. He only gave me the chance to remember who I was." The camera of life pulled back then, revealing Amara, calm, strong, radiant, a woman who had collapsed, not to surrender, but to rise higher than anyone expected. Her story wasn't just survival. It was sovereignty, and that is how her collapse became her crown.